Welcome back to the Babbling Pastor Podcast, the bestest, most listened toest podcastist on the entire internetist. We welcome you to the cohesion of thought, intellect, and amazing awesomeness now. I am your host, Michael, and this is your host. Love it. I love it. Oh, the video version is better. The spinning of the chair, man. I'm a
little dizzy.
Isn't it amazing to you how the things you could do when you were 7, you can't do anymore with ease? That's the frustrating thing about getting old for me.
It's actually what I'm looking forward to most in heaven is I'll be able to get dizzy slower, you know?
Yeah. Or maybe not. Well, yeah, surely, I don't know. Would God take that away? Or is dizziness a part of the fall? That's the theological question. Is dizziness a part of the fall?
So the question being addressed today,
so there's so many ancient early church fathers that try to answer literally every question. Someone somewhere, like Tertullian, was sitting down going, dizziness is a part of the quantum. It just got lost somewhere. That scroll's gone. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, welcome back to the second episode in which we answer or respond to the statements of atheists. So I not too long ago put online because I had an influx of atheists following me because of a particular tweet that I'm not going to talk about now. But I tweeted out after I saw that influx and asked, since I clearly have your attention, I have a couple questions for you. And I said this: what is your biggest beef with Christianity? And what are some questions that no one has been able to answer for you? And I got a lot of responses, as we talked about last time, all positive, all great, all wonderful. To be fair, there were some atheists that were kind. But in general, no. But I guess the same could be said as Christians in some regards as well. So here's the question or statement we're going to be looking at today. And it says this: why do some of you insist on telling non-Christians about Jesus as though he is an off-brand new diet that we should try? I guarantee you, we've all heard about Jesus ad nauseum. If we were interested in being Christians, we'd already be Christians. So there's a lot. There's something in particular I definitely want to touch in on this, but what are your initial responses? Like, right, as a pastor, you say, hey, come to church, and they're like, if I want to be a Christian, I'd be a Christian already.
Yeah. I think that she has a point in the first sentence, the actual question.
Yeah.
And I think that Christians do a disservice to Christ with the whole, hey, give Jesus a try kind of mentality.
Like Rick Warren said that one time.
Yes, like Rick Warren.
Okay.
Who, by the way, it can't have his mind changed by culture, but that's a clip. I'm definitely podcasting about that, by the way.
Okay.
Because
look forward to that.
That's frustrated me. But I mean, that give Jesus a try kind of a thing. First of all, that's impossible theologically. Like biblically, that's not a thing. You can't just give Jesus a try. Either you're a Christian or you're not. And there are no Christians who turn back into pagans. That deconstruction kind of thing is a myth. There are only Christians and pagans who masquerade as Christians for a time or whatever. Those are the two options. That's it. And you can't try Jesus and try Christianity. If you try Christianity as an unbeliever, you're going to hate it. I mean,
it's not gonna be a fun time, bro. Yeah.
Right. You're actually inviting people in to solidify their unbelief at the end of the day, if you do it that way, because it is a work of God when that happens. When someone does actually become a Christian, what the Bible teaches us is that it is because they have been given a new heart by God. Essentially, they've been changed. The scriptures use all sort. I mean, you know this, right? The scriptures use all sorts of words and phrases for this: a new creation, born again, those kinds of things. The point is, you are actually changed in such a way that it is no longer you no longer have hatred toward God. And to be clear, that's what unbelief is. You may not agree with that. You may not display it in obvious ways, you think, but that's what it is. It's a defiance of your Creator. That's the whole thing. And the scriptures also teach that everyone knows this, that everyone knows who God is, that He's revealed enough of Himself, even when you go to the Grand Canyon, for you to be condemned by Him for not loving.
It's just when you say that, I'm not to interrupt you, but when you say that, it's just like you get to heaven, standing before God, and it's like, you didn't give me enough evidence. It's like, I remember you going to the ocean. I remember you waking up. Like, was that not enough for you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe like count your heartbeats throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But this, she's right. That's my first initial response is that, yeah, if you're treating the Son of the living God, and the thing, the event that is the crux of all human history, as a brand new diet we should try, then you're going about it the wrong way. And I would even say probably repentance is needed. Because that's treating Christ as something that's a little nonchalant for who He is.
What I think the two statements go together. So the first one being like, why do let me get this pulled up. Why do some of you insist on telling non-Christians about Jesus as though He's a brand new diet? I guarantee you we've all heard about Jesus ad nauseum, and these two things go together. So that we've heard about Jesus ad nauseum is something I really want to touch on, because I think we assume, Christians probably do assume, that their non-believing friends have heard about Jesus already. And non-Christians probably do also, as she states here, like we've already heard the sales pitch. We've already heard the whole thing. We know about Jesus. We know about all these things He can do. And going to your point, this idea that the way Jesus has been presented as a try Him out for 30 days, or, hey, unbelievers. I mean, I've heard so many pastors that I review literally say from the podium, hey, just try these principles out. Even if you don't believe in Jesus, these principles in Scripture are going to help you. And it's one of those things that it's sort of, that in and of itself is a sales pitch of try Jesus because it'll help your life, at least, even if you don't follow Him. Your facial expressions. And whenever you assume that is people's understanding of Jesus, there is this thought that, oh, well, they've already heard about Him. No, you have not heard about Jesus. You've heard about principles. You have almost been sold a sales pitch on a person or a lifestyle. But what I found is, especially when I talk to people about, all right, like what they actually understand about Christianity, it's all wrong. Like they don't have an understanding of what Orthodox belief is in the person and work of Jesus Christ, what the implications are that in somebody's life. So for example, I trained a guy not too long ago, a couple months ago, and he's grown up in the exact same area that we grew up in his whole life. He's 10 years older than us. He's 52. And, 52. So he's older than us. And, he's been around churches his whole life, not attended any of them, right? I think he mentioned that he went to like an Easter program once or twice. But the point is, he's been in the area. And in my head, when we had this conversation, it was mind-blowing to me that he was like, yeah, I don't really have any clue what Christians believe. Like, I've heard about Jesus, but I don't know what you guys believe. And he grew up in the same area we did. And my assumption was, there's a church on every corner, bro. Like, there's programs all the time. There's people constantly, doing things, for their church and outreach. But this man's grown up 52 years of his life. No one's ever told him about who Jesus is, what the Bible means, any of this. And I think that sometimes we assume, oh, they've heard about Jesus ad nauseum. So, like,
Yeah.
there's no real point of rehashing this. There's no point of getting into the deep things of the scriptures. They've already heard it. They've just rejected it. 100% not true. I can give you 5 different instances in which I've talked to people within the last year about who Jesus is and have no clue about what salvation means, have no idea what believers believe about who Jesus is, resurrection. Like there are people that are out there that have been told about Jesus, or at least in some form or fashion, that don't know that Christians believe that Jesus rose from the dead. They just think that Jesus was this really good prophet, this really good teacher, and Christians follow his teachings. There was one lady, they're like, hold on, you believe this dude got up from death? 100%. Like, never had heard that before. Again, grew up in not where we are at, but in the Bible Belt in the South. And so that you would think, oh, well, of course she's heard about who Jesus is and heard about, the gospel. Not at all. And she went to church for a little bit. And so it's one of those things where when you present, I think these two things that this person states build off of one another. When you present Jesus as a sales pitch or a make your life better or a here are the principles that matter, that just in and of itself misses the gospel. And then these people think they've heard about who Jesus is. They think they know what Christians believe. And they are tired of hearing about it because maybe they did try it and it didn't work. And so they're just like, well, that's just one more thing that I can kind of check off that doesn't do anything for me. And so they assume they've heard the gospel. They think they know what Christians believe. And then Christians on the other side are like, well, I'm just tired of hearing that, I've already heard it all. They haven't. And then so it's just this cycle of like, you think they've heard it, they think they've heard it, but they have no clue. And unfortunately, some Christians have no clue in regards to how to explain that. And so we're just in this cycle of people being like, well, I've heard about it. And we assume that they're telling the truth, that they've heard about it when they haven't.
Yeah. I mean, and I think one of the things that is so terrible about all of that is that we end up, as Christians, walking alongside of a bunch of people who are headed to hell, and we think they know, and they don't really care, and so we don't do anything, and it has to be like such a it's such a great tragedy, the whole thing, and I think that there's a lot in Christianity that is so even let me just deal with her last sentence for a second. And this is an illustration. I know she didn't mean it like this, but this is an illustration of how little people actually understand about Christianity. If we were interested in Christianity, we'd already be Christians. Now, there's a sense in which that's true. But what you don't realize is that to be interested in Christianity, it begins and ends with you being interested in Christ, not just another religion. If I promise, if I were not a Christian and I watched Christians behave, and that's what my whole assessment of Christianity being worthy or unworthy is, I wouldn't be a Christian either. But it's not. The whole thing with Christianity is Christ. Like, he's the crux of the whole thing. He is it. That's why it's called Christianity. And so and what you're talking about, Michael, what you mentioned is completely true. And that is that Christ is not just something that you try. When we present as Christians, when we present some sort of gospelish thing like that, what we're presenting is simply another lifestyle to try. And she actually worded it perfectly well, a brand new diet, because this is an illustration she uses that is super true. It's a helpful illustration because there's a new diet every 30 minutes, and it's always the very best one you can be on. And oh my gosh, I lost 400 pounds and whatever, right? And now I'm ripped. No exercise at all. Or I mean, like, and I can still have chocolate, right? Like all these diets that always come out, right? It's like, they're always the best one. And yet, I mean, you can sense by my own sarcasm that they're not, right? You know what I mean?
Clearly
Like they're
not. Yeah.
always this best thing that you can do. Oh, take this pill, you'll lose weight and not have to do anything. And of as skeptical as I am of those kind of diets, I would be the same kind of skeptical if Christianity were just some sort of religious system. But the fact of the matter is that the Christ of Christianity is the Son of God, that God is real. And if that's true, if it's true that God is real, if it's true that there is a God who created all things, then it is true. It follows logically that that you're just a pot and he's the potter, right? And a tree is a pot and he's a pot. Like everything is his. And so therefore, there's a situation now, right? Because I'm living in active rebellion against this creator. He has shown us his law, the things that are best for us. The 10 commandments being written in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy, that's not the first time that the 10 commandments existed. Like God's moral law existed in the heart of Adam, and Adam rebelled against that. And so the Christ of Christianity, what gets sold is Jesus, without an understanding that you're not only drowning, you're freaking dead. You're dead. You're a dead, rotting corpse, and you desperately need Christ, who is the only way, the only one with the power to do this. You desperately need Christ to reach down, grab you by the skeletal hand that's rotting, and pull you up and give you life. That's the situation. And yet what we're told, what we tell people so often in when you mention sermons like that and pastors telling people, it's like, oh my gosh, they shouldn't be pastors.
I agree. Yes.
If I'm behind a pulpit with the Bible in front of me, nevertheless, and teaching, teach you. So this is what I do when I'm preaching. I preach that our people who are Christians in our church may be convicted, cut to the heart. All the pride and wonderful things about us melt away and crumble off of us, and we feel desperate all over again. And then you direct them to Christ. If you're an unbeliever, you happen to be an unbeliever sitting in the crowd, then it's literally the same thing. I'm preaching that you may be saved from something. Not that here's a way to live a better life next week. Because frankly, if that's the thing, Christianity is not a good answer. It's not. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
if my standards are what the world is for a good life, then Christianity is not the best thing you could do. The best thing you could do is talk to, a good financial advisor, and get a solid job and save a lot and buy what you want and do the American dream thing. And I mean, there are lots of easier ways to live your life than becoming a
Hmm.
Christian. You're an evidence of that,
Yeah. Well,
right?
you're definitely
Because
not going to be
of
in
all the
like power. Yeah. I mean, Christianity
yeah,
says lay it down and pursue Him, and the world.
right.
The good thing to do would be like step on everybody and go up the ladder, or find the tax break so you don't have to spend all your money. And yeah, there's a whole lot other things to be more successful, quote unquote. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've sold a picture to people that is not true. The biggest problem that people have, we think, when we uh, preach the gospel like that, that's a different gospel. Because what we're selling people then is that your biggest problem in life is maybe your marriage, or your uh, uh, your family life, or your relationship with your kids, or your financial situation or your job, or like pick one, right? The worst thing about your life, the biggest problem that you have is those kinds of things that are all completely arbitrary compared to the actual biggest problem that any of us have. And that is that we have sinned against an immutable, perfect, holy, righteous God, the God of the universe, who created all things, who has the power to wipe you out like Noah in the flood, right? That God, we've sinned against him. That's a big problem,
Yeah.
right? It makes whatever marriage problem you might have look pretty insignificant. Like, that's the big problem. And the big problem is, because he's just and he's a good judge, you're going to incur his wrath for that. And it's not, hell isn't a party where you can be with your buddies. Hell is God actively pouring out his wrath on you for your disobedience to such a beautiful, perfect God. And that is a big problem. And we don't sell the whole gospel. We just assume that people will get it if we give them the Jesus part at the end.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
need
a
a preach
terrible
preacher button.
disservice.
I need a preacher button where it's just like the organ starts going or something in the background. That's what I need, man. That's what I need. You got that going there for a second. No, that's I think, and to sort of, I guess, sort of start summing up this episode, because I think really everything that's said there is addressed. But I do want to touch on one point, because you were talking about like the exvangelical or the deconstruction movement. And I think the people I've talked to, the people that we know that have left the faith, quote unquote, what I mean, however you want to word that, have done so in some part because of what you said before. Like if I was looking at Christians for the example of how, how to live, then I'd have an issue too. And that's a lot of the people I've spoken with are like, yeah, but look at Christians. They've tied themselves to politics, or look at Christians. They treat people this way or that way. And it's one of those things where uh, us selling Christianity as a new diet or a try this and it'll be better situation has actually led to the I don't know if, crisis, if you want to call it, but it's led to the gates being open to a bunch of people that have been in church leaving and now saying, well, this obviously doesn't work, and not in droves, because you were sold a really crappy product that you were told was the best product ever, and you've seen nothing but terrible things come from the very thing that you were told were great. And now you're disappointed. You're disenchanted with it. You're like, what is this thing that I was told was so great that isn't? And it's because you were not sold the gospel. And not sold the gospel. You didn't hear the gospel preached. You didn't see true lives that were, true hearts and minds being changed. And so you saw it, and you had really, like what you said before, you kind of had the natural reaction, which is, well, this is crap. Like, why would I want this? If this is what you say it is, why would I again, to your point, I could do better with the world's principles than I could do with these. And because of that, I mean, the church has really created their own problem, in the sense that you've had the seeker sensitive movement, which is really sold, hey, look at this Jesus as a product principle situation, that has
Yeah.
led to so many people leaving, because that was the natural reaction of seeing, a terrible quote unquote product. And we haven't, they haven't had interaction with a very many people, at least, whose hearts and minds have been changed. And we're really dealing, I think, with that now, just that whole system and that structure. But there's so many implications to that roll down in this tweet, but also just in general.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, to kind of end my comments, I understand where this person is coming from. And I agree that if that, and I mean, on a personal, to this person specifically note, like, if this is how he's been presented to you, then that's not the Christ of the Bible. That is not the Jesus of the Bible. Um, and my hope for you is that you would actually listen to this whole thing that we're doing today, and then begin to actually research um, the gospel in itself, the situation that Christians. So stop looking at the lives of Christians. Although Christians, we should be ambassadors for Christ.
Yeah.
We should strive. Of course, we should strive to live according to the scriptures. Of course, we should strive for holiness and further sanctification and growing in Christ. And yet we're going to fail. And so that's why, as this person who has commented on the tweet, that I would say, don't look chiefly at the lives of Christians. What you're going to see is, hypocrisy, and failure and sin. And the only thing that makes a Christian is that that we gradually, and sometimes very gradually, attain victory over certain sins because of the power of Christ in us. And that is all of him. It has nothing to do with pride or us being awesome or anything like that, or strong or whatever. It's all of Christ. And so focus your attention on the actual gospel and on Christ. The Christ of Christianity is why we chase Christianity as Christians. It's why we pursue it. It's why we attempt to read the scriptures and study more, and know God more through his word. It's why we do all the stuff we do, because of Christ and who he is. So don't just look at his lifestyle, look at what he did, and pay attention to that. And my prayer for you is that you'll come to know him in such a way that you'll have saving faith too. And it won't just be a diet to try, because it's absolutely not just a diet to try.
Awesome. Look at that pastor's heart. Well, guys, hopefully that was helpful to you, and we will talk to you next time.